Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way.
Y'all remember that Grinch movie? The one where he stole Christmas? Honestly, I don't really remember this movie because oh man. Actually, I think I saw it when I was in New Zealand for Christmas with the fam. I think. But I don't even remember the full story. But I talked about it in a paper that I wrote recently. And I used AI to like summarize the plot. And I had like a big takeaway or some type of argument that I was making. So I'll explain the story and then I'll connect it back to the argument that I was making in the paper. Basically, I'm pretty sure most people, if they don't know the story, they've at the very least heard the Grinch or they know who the Grinch is. But in this town where everyone loves Christmas, it's called Whoville, there's this person who really, really hates Christmas. There's a green dude, kind of like Shrek, low key. Wait, actually, the connection is probably there because everyone like saw him as a monster, probably. But the Grinch hates Christmas. Everyone else loves Christmas. So as one Christmas is coming up and everyone's like out and going to get presents and putting up the decorations and stuff because everyone loves Christmas, the Grinch has this brilliant idea to overnight be like the anti Santa Claus. Like he's gonna go and instead of giving gifts to the kids, he's gonna go and steal all of them. And then on top of that, he's gonna go and take all their decorations too, like literally everything. So his whole idea was that he's gonna go and kill their Christmas and kill the vibes. But Christmas Day comes, all the Who's in Whoville, they wake up, instead of being sad and crying or whatever, they're actually like, they're so happy even without the gifts. And when the Grinch sees this, I think the movie, there's a scene where his heart grows like 10 times bigger, but he realizes how empty and alone his life is. And so he like makes a change of heart, changes who he wants to be, and then gives everything back and then like kumbaya happy ever after. That's kind of the rundown of the story. Now, the argument that I was making in this paper, or what this big takeaway lesson that I have for this story, is that in the beginning of the movie, he kind of has an idea of what he wants to be, who he wants to become, like this idea of his dream self. Because keep in mind, he valued like deceit and bitterness and loneliness. And so his dream self embodied those traits, those attributes. And it's the reason why he went out and did all these things that were in line with that misguided dream self. The misguided version was that dream self that went out and stole Christmas from everyone. But then he kind of had this like epiphany moment where he kind of like came to himself and he realized, you know what? This dream self that I'm after is like sucks. It's like empty. So instead of doing that, let me pivot, let me change courses on a new dream self and go after that instead. And so that's kind of like the arc of this story is he goes after this one misguided version of a dream self, realizes how empty it is, and then has a new conception of a new dream self that's actually healthier and better and like more giving and joyful, and then goes after that. And so in this paper, I write about how when we live the virtues of like integrity and honesty and courage and justice, like things like those are the virtues. When we live those types of virtues, it is good for the one who's living that. Like it is good for me that I'm being forgiving, that I'm being loving. And the reason it's good for me isn't because of like some external reward that the world is going to give me in return. And it's not even necessarily, although I think it's true, but it's not necessarily just because those things are like good inherently or intrinsically in it of themselves. But I think there's like this third value that I introduce in this paper. And this third value I call formative value. And that's the value that the Grinch gets when after his change of heart, he starts to pursue that dream self and starts to embody those types of virtues that are actually valuable. And in the same way, in my life, the reason that it's good for me to embody these types of virtues is because of how they help me get to my dream self, how they help me align more closely with Jesus Christ. And I would argue also that it gives a life meaning. And I think this is where like the myth of Sisyphus comes into play, where here's this dude rolling a boulder up on a hill, and you really look at it like, dang, his life kind of sucks. Like, what's the meaning of that dude's life? But there's a way to see it where he gains meaning because of formative value, because he has this conception of what his dream self is. And through the struggle, through the pain, he gets closer to that dream self through living, in this case, some virtue of like hard work But that's the story, and keep that story in mind because I'll come back to it later in this episode. But moving on to the next section is the doubles of the week. These are 2 dubs and 2 L's from the past week. Dub number 1, your boy ran his first half marathon. Big dub. That was phenomenal. I can't lie, it was tough. It was hard, but I had to do it. I wasn't gonna run the full marathon because I didn't have my running shoes, or the full half marathon because I didn't have my running shoes. So I was just gonna do like 8 mile, and I was like, bro, if I'm gonna do 8 mile, might as well do 10. Then I was like, bro, if I'm gonna do 10, might as well just do a half. So I did a half and was gassed by the end of it, but happy I did it. Time wasn't like phenomenal. I think it was barely under 12 minutes per mile, but got her done. Big dub. And then the other dub is that, oh, my sleep is so much more locked in now. And it's like, man, it feels like a superpower. Like being able to consistently sleep around that like 11 to 12 mark has been super helpful because it's like, it's still late. It's early enough where I can wake up like semi decently early, but it's also late enough where if I have to stay up, then I can stay up and still wake up around that 8:30 to 9-ish mark. So that's a big dub. Moving on to L's of the week. I think, honestly, there was one L that came immediately to mind. But for the second L, I was really trying to think about it. In some sense, I don't think I've been failing hard or fast, at least in the past week. Like, there weren't any big L's that immediately came to mind. But there's this one L that came to mind. I was like, oh, dang, that's actually facts. But the big L is that I've been kind of forgetting about my God. And what I mean by this is like, I really haven't been praying, really haven't been reading my scriptures, really haven't been like surrounding myself with Christians, like doing Bibles, things like that. And so I'll kind of come back to this later, but I think that is definitely one of the L's that kind of took me a while to think of, low-key. But the other L that came to mind immediately was that this past weekend was like, it was a super lazy weekend. Like I thought I was going to get a lot done because on Fridays when I ran the half marathon. So I was like, dude, Friday I was locked in, literally woke up, immediately got to work. As soon as I wrapped up work, immediately went for that run. It took me like 2.5 hours, bro. So I was like 9 to 4 is when I was working, and then 4 to like 6:30, 7-ish was my run. And then right after that, I went to see a musical. So it was literally like back to back to back. And so I thought I was gonna like take that same energy into the weekend, like into Saturday. Come Saturday, bro, my legs were dead from the marathon. I could barely walk. And so I didn't really get much work done. But I think the even bigger L in that is that I think I've been too focused on the amount of work I do. Like, I let my output determine my mood, which I don't think is the way I want to like go about life. I don't think that's the move because I think what's more important is like the input. But even then, my input wasn't even that much. Yeah, I gotta think about that more because I don't think, maybe it is healthy, maybe it's not. But I don't think having my mood predicated on how much work I get done, I don't think that's like what I want. And this kind of gets into the philosophizing section, or the first thing I've been thinking about is like, what is true efficiency or true productivity? Because I was thinking about how the startup that I'm at right now, based in Utah, probably like 99% of them, like I don't think there's a single one in there who's not a member of the church. And so here I'm thinking like on a Sunday, they're probably all focused on church and stuff. And so they're probably not doing that much work, at least compared to their other days. So they're spending the Sundays as like a time to rest and re-energize. And in some ways, that is the most productive thing because, and this is the thinking, is that the reason it's so productive is that even though they don't get much work done in that time, it helps set them up for the rest of the week so they can get like even more work done in that time. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. And that's why I came back to like this past weekend where it was a lazy weekend because like I didn't really get that much work done, but I did get like a decent amount of work done, but not nearly as much as it would have been on an actual work day. So yeah, so I'm trying to think about that. Like maybe it would be more productive to spend the weekends resting, or at least if not the entire weekend, at least the Sunday. Like spend that Sunday resting so that I can get back to work like way harder, way more when the week actually comes. So maybe that's just like a thought at the back of my mind. The other thing I was thinking about for the philosophizing section, and this kind of comes back to the other L I was talking about when I was talking about like forgetting God. But today we're talking about, not today, but this past week, we're talking about the parable of the lost. And then parables of the lost, I think it's like Luke 15, but we're going through and Jesus tells 3 stories about how these things, people, objects, animals, how they get lost and then they're eventually found, and then everyone's like celebrating because they're found. But one of the examples was like these sheep who were being looked after by a shepherd, and there's 100 sheep, and then one of the sheep gets lost. And the shepherd goes out, leaves the 99, looks for the one, brings back the one, like puts it on his shoulders and brings it back to the flock or herd, whatever you call a group of sheep. But the thing that stood out to me, at least in this study of it, when I was looking at it, was that sheep don't intentionally mean to like do any harm. They don't intentionally mean to rebel against the shepherd. They kind of just like, put their head down, like go off in their own world. It's like they're not intentional in getting lost. It just like happens to happen. And I think people are very, very similar in this respect, where we don't mean to overlook family obligations. We just get lost in the work. Or we don't mean to get fat or obese. We just get lost in like the food and dessert. And we don't mean to be broke. We just get lost in spending. Like these are all things where we don't mean to do any harm. It's not like that is not the intention. The intention is actually somewhere else. But we're like putting all our focus in that other thing that we're forgetting the main thing. And I think this is a perfect example where like, I don't mean to ignore God or just like let him go unseen. I just get lost in the work that I'm doing or the life that I'm living. And so I think it's a good reminder, now that I'm like saying all this out loud, it's probably a good reminder to take a step back, like be the sheep and stop looking down. Like instead of looking down, just look up. Just once, consider what's around. Where am I headed? Where am I going? And reevaluate. Like kind of what the Grinch did, where the Grinch was like, oh dang, it's time to look up. It's time to like look at where the shepherd is and go towards where the shepherd is. But in some ways, I think this is a similar thing, like a good reminder to do that. So that'll probably be my intention for this next week, is to look up, which is very vague, but I think it fits. I think it fits. Okay, the next thing I've been thinking about is the ethics of AI in school. This is an interesting one because you remember that paper that I was just telling you about, like talking about the Grinch and like living the virtues and why it's good, it's like formative value. Okay, this is interesting because like surely my dream self, who is Jesus Christ, wouldn't intentionally like cheat, right? But the thing is as I was writing that paper, I used AI a ton. And the reason I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about this because I think that's okay. Like truthfully, I think AI is like such this powerful tool that it would be a shame if I let it go to waste. No, but like legitimately, it's just like so powerful and is fundamental to how we will live our lives for the rest of our lives. Like when the calculator was first introduced in schools, surely all those teachers were like, oh my goodness, we gotta ban the calculator. This is like terrible for knowledge or whatever. But then again, like they were having the same conversations when writing was coming up. When writing was first a thing, I think it was Socrates, Aristotle. I think it was Socrates. I think it was Socrates who was like worried about writing because people would just like start writing things and then forget what they write, and so they get dumber. And like same thing happened with writing, same thing happened with calculators and math. And I think something similar is happening with AI where like, don't get me wrong, I think depending on how you use it, you can easily get dumber. But I personally think and can vouch for the fact that I think AI is helping me get smarter. It's like helping me in the way I think and in the way I consider other objections to like a view or argument that I want to put. And that is my justification for using AI for this paper in school. Because low-key, I was writing this paper and I was getting super annoyed because I have to go through this whole process of humanizing the paper after I write it because like I don't want it to get flagged for AI and then I get like F because yeah, I'll say this as well. It's definitely not allowed. Like AI is not allowed on the syllabus. So there's that. But dude, I just think it's like so essential. And depending on how you use it, it can be like such a powerful tool. And I think I use it in a way where it's a powerful tool for good, for productive thinking. I was low-key thinking about writing another paper or essay or argument or whatever, defending using AI for philosophy papers, like the morals of using this thing. But that was the other thing I was thinking about for the philosophizing session. And the final thing is how speed is a green flag. I think there's a quicker thing, but when I started recruiting, man, I think that was only like a month and a half ago. Sheesh. But when I started recruiting hard when I was in Utah for all these startups, I think I applied to like 50 different startups. And within a day, Leland got back to me. Yeah, I literally think one day passed, they got back to me, and then we hopped on an interview like a couple days after that. And a month later, a month and a half later, I'm getting all these messages back from other startups talking about, oh, you made it past our first scan, like we are inviting you to an interview or whatever. And I'm over here like, bro, I already got like, I'm already locked in for another offer. And so the reason I bring this up is because I think speed is a green flag in startups, like a huge green flag, because one of the very few advantages that startups have over big corporations, over the incumbents, is that startups are fast. Like there's not many people, and because there's not many people, you can like do things very, very quickly. Because in the big tech world, there's like all this bureaucracy that they have to go through. But in startups, it's like one dude making decisions. So it's like one dude who made the decisions like, okay, his resume looks good, let's pass him through to the first interview. And I think the same thing was true when I was interviewing at Paraform. Like it was a huge green flag. I think both for the startup itself, but for me, because I did the work like in hours, whereas other people would probably do it in days. And on top of that, like we literally went through initial screening call to the final round in like 3 days, bro. Like that's just unheard of. And we went through 3 rounds of interviews. Like that's just insane. But that's one of the things that I think I'll probably look out for in startups, at least like as a recruiter or even as a VC. Like speed is so crucial in the startups world. But I also thought like this is true for dating as well. It's like not dating, but like even talking to other people, because speed is like an indicator. It's at least some type of indicator of like interest. So that is the connection. Speed is a green flag in startups and dating. Moving on to the weekly roundup. These are random finds I had from the week. Could be a question, a book, a quote, anything that stuck. But this quote, man, it really hit home. Like a ton. I'm not sure if I brought it up earlier before, but it connects a lot to this whole like theme of this episode. But the quote is, or it's actually a Bible verse, Luke 15, verse 17, and it reads, "When he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger?'" And for some backstory, this is in that chapter where Jesus is telling these 3 stories about the lost things. And this is the final story of the prodigal son, where there's this father who's like super rich, super wealthy, and there's these 2 sons, an older and a younger son. The younger son goes to his dad and is like, "Hey, I don't want to wait till you die. Just give me half of what you have right now, and I'll go off and do my own thing." And that's exactly what the son did. The son took half of everything the father had, went out, and just burned through all of it. And then now he's like flat broke. And then this verse comes up where it says, he came to himself. And those words, I don't know, they just like hit hard. Because this is a prime example of what it looks like for someone to hit rock bottom. Like, it's a prime example of what it looks like to see that life just sucks. And then have this epiphany like, oh my goodness, what I've been chasing, what I've been going after is emptiness. What I've been going after, my dream self has been misguided. And then there's this moment, like this coming of Jesus moment, or in this case, it's like he came to himself. He realized that what he was doing is just dumb. And so it comes to this epiphany, like it's time to change and pursue or go after a different dream self. And so the son in this case, he came to himself, is like, oh my goodness, what am I doing with my life? And he went back to the father. And this comes back to the Grinch story as well, where it's like, oh my goodness, the Grinch wakes up. Here he is expecting like all his hard work to pay off and everyone else to be crying and furious and mad and angry. But he wakes up to like singing and happiness and joy. And he's like, oh my goodness, dude, what have I been doing with my life? Like, bro, this thing that I've been chasing after, it's just empty. It's just like broken. It's nothingness. So why don't I change what I'm going after and go after something else? And the reason I think this hits really hard for me is because like I had a couple of these moments, especially when I was really getting lost in the binge eating. Like that was really, really bad. I was honestly looking at photos of myself like 2 years ago, a year ago, when I was just like, I gained so much weight. I think I hit 230 at 26% body fat. And freshman year, when I first came in, I was just like eating like crazy. And for some background, I think that's literally, because I came into school at like 190, 200. I literally gained 30 pounds, bro. Like, that's just insane because of how much I was binge eating. And it was like this type of moment, like, oh my goodness, what am I going after? This coming to myself. It's like coming to Jesus moments, like, oh my goodness. And so I had this similar thing where here I am going after this one thing, and then I realized this thing is empty. And so like time to chase after a new dream self. So I think that's why this really hit home. And a couple other thoughts I had that connects to this is how it's a lot easier, I think, to find yourself when you hit rock bottom, when you're going through those tough times. Because when life is easy and it's like, it's going all right, but it's like not bad enough to be a coming to myself moment. Like it doesn't hit the threshold of tough enough. But I just like keep going. That's the kind of life that I think is just on autopilot. It's like never truly realizing the real dream self. I think that's a bar right there, bro. That was off the dome. The dome, bro. But I think that's true. It's like a life on autopilot is a life that hasn't thought about the dream self, I think. Because if you haven't thought about the dream self, like about what you really want to become and really given that some thought, then what are you going after? Like, what are you doing? Because at that point, I think life just is on autopilot and it's like getting pulled in directions that, yeah, you just like, wherever I go, I go. But I think that's like a really big epiphany, actually. But man, dropping bars this episode. Anyways, moving on to the next part of the weekly roundup is a question that stuck with me. I think I saw this on LinkedIn or something, but it was like, here's a way to know if you've made progress. Would you trade places with you a year ago? And I thought about this like, heck no, I wouldn't. Like, freak that, bro. I would not want to do that. So I think I've definitely made progress. But I think it's a good question to keep in mind. Like, would you trade places with who you were a year ago? Because I think it's pretty accurate, I would say, to how much you've grown or how much I've grown. Because if I answer that question, I was like, yes, I would trade. Like, that's tough. Like, a case where I would trade places with me a year ago is if I gained like 30 more pounds. But here I am, bro. Last week I ran a freaking half marathon, bro. And I'm about to do a 20-mile run tomorrow. Like these are the types of goals I'm like, freak yeah, bro. Like me a year ago could never. Anyways, moving on to oh yeah. There's this course that I found. It's like a 6-hour branding course. Bro, literally, this fool easily could have made like $1 million off of this, sold this thing easily for like $1,000, $1,500. But he just put it up on YouTube for free. It's the creative director or former creative director for the Hormozis, which the Hormozis are goated. And also Gary Vee, who is goated, bro. So he like grew Gary Vee's TikTok, I think, from 300K to 3 million followers in 3 months. And then for the Hormozis, I mean, he just like blew their stuff up. So he put out this huge course. But the biggest takeaway I had from the course is because going into it, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. Oh, that's what I was doing on Friday. I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. But the reason is because I was thinking of like starting this YouTube channel and then over the summer, like really going in on that, like putting a lot more effort into growing a YouTube channel. Because I think that would be like interesting side quest. But the very first thing he talks about in this is to clarify the why. Like, what is the purpose of building the brand? And then with that purpose in mind, that will direct whatever else I do from building the brand. It's like, why exactly do I want to build a brand? And I think the reason I want to build a brand is because there's this thing that happened, I think this past weekend. I was at like this random function, this party thing. And even like since I've gotten back from SF, I get these random side comments like of like meeting people for the first time or running into people who I haven't seen in literally months. And they're like, hey, I read all your LinkedIn posts. Or like, bro, I love what you're doing on LinkedIn. Like, I think just being associated with like this idea of growth or business or startups or entrepreneurship, like something like that is pretty interesting. But even more than that, I think it would be cool, man, because I'm thinking about it now, like realistically, this podcast isn't to build that brand. Like this podcast is a selfish desire to record the journey. So maybe the YouTube video will just be like an extension of that. Yeah, we'll see. Because after I watched that, I made the decision to just go harder on LinkedIn and just like try to post more often, more frequently. Like try testing out different types of posts. Granted, I think his target audience with this course was like legit businesses. So like how those businesses could like build their brand, how they should do their content strategy so like they can get more sales. But I think for me, it's not necessarily about sales. It's more for like, I don't know. Bro, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not even for anyone else. It's just for me. So, bro, low-key, I'm gonna just send it. Like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to record tomorrow because I'm planning a 20-mile run tomorrow in prep for this marathon and like see what I can cook up with that. Maybe it'll be like a legit YouTube video. Maybe it won't be. Maybe I'll just like put it into the YouTube video at the very end when I run the full marathon. I don't know. We'll see. But there's some ideas I had in the back of my mind. Definitely check it out. Would highly recommend for anyone thinking about building a brand. Anyways, moving on to the video for this episode. There's this video I found. I saw this ages ago, but I came across it again, and so I watched it. And the title of it is called "I Worked Out Like David Goggins for 100 Days." And if you know anything about David Goggins, bro, he's just a menace. He's a menace to society, bro. Like, he's just locked in. But honestly, this video was like, it was super inspiring because this dude in 100 days did an Ironman. Like, that's insane. And within 30 days of training, he did an ultra marathon, which is 31 miles. That's just like crazy. And even crazier part than that is that he was so fat. Like, he was so unhealthy when he started it. And I think, oh wait, oh my goodness, this is all connecting. Like, his story is actually like a perfect example of this whole narrative, or this whole like prodigal son narrative, where he's like hits rock bottom, decides to make a change, and then goes after that new change that he wants to make. So yeah, honestly, like, just an inspiring story. And then the other thing is, like, I really liked his editing. Like, his hook was really good. Yeah, the way he edited this thing is like something similar to what I want to do for my marathon training video. But yeah, his is like extremely good. So we'll see what I can cook up. And then the next thing is the podcast that I found. This was a pod by the current CEO of YC, who went on to the Knowledge Project, which is very good. The big takeaway, or the thing that stuck with me the most from this podcast, was a little story he had. His story that he tells is like, sales is where you have like 100 boxes. There's 4 gold nuggets spread out across those boxes. And usually people are like, they kind of open the box like slowly, but they're kind of scared to open it. And even when they do open it, they do it like half-heartedly. And then when there's nothing in the box, they like run away because they're so afraid or so scared that there wasn't anything in the box. But the way he describes it, like, sales is like, the way to do sales is to look at the box, cut it open, see if there's anything in it. And if there's nothing, then you move on. And I think this, like, coming back to this thing of like being decisive, I think there's another reason I think I'm decisive is because, like, I'm not afraid of opening the boxes and there's nothing in it. Because that's another, I think that's another benefit of this fail forward mindset, is that if there is nothing, then at least I got good at opening the box and I can move on to the next thing. If there's nothing in there, then I got even better at opening the box. Then I can move on to the next thing. And it's like, yeah, that's the story that stood out for me. And then finally, the last thing for this section is the book. I listened to this during 2 days ago, or yesterday, on my 8-mile run. But it was a biography by Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Education of a Bodybuilder. And this just goes through his life, but more specifically, like, how he became this goated bodybuilder. And it's kind of wild. Like, his story is kind of wild. Probably the things that stuck out to me the most is, first of all, he was only 19 after he won his first international bodybuilding competition, which is kind of wild. That's insane. And the even crazier part is that it was like so long ago, and he was in this remote country where this airplane ride was his first flight ever that he didn't even pay for. Someone else paid for him because he was like that guy. And he went out and won it. Like, oh, that's just wild to me. And he was only 19, bro. Like, that's insane. Okay, so that was like one thing, is like changing the baseline. I think is what that did for me. It's like, dang, he's winning international bodybuilding competition at 19, bro. And what the heck am I doing? Something like that. The other thing is, in the book, he talks a lot about how powerful the mind is. Because on his second bodybuilding competition, like the second big one where it was international, and he went out and he saw someone else who's like super jacked. And he talks about in this book is that as soon as he saw the other person, he had this idea that he was going to lose. And he says, it was at that moment where I already lost. And in the chapters that follow, or in the story that he tells after that follows, like every single competition he went into after, he had this irrational belief that he was going to win. And it's that type of thing that I'm like, I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially going into the marathon, because I think, like, in the way he describes it, he says it's won before it's won, where it's won in the mind before it's won in actuality. And I think it's something similar, like, I'm trying to win this marathon, or like envision it before I even run it. or tomorrow. I'm trying to run this 20-mile run before I even do it. And then the other interesting takeaway that I had is that he was so dead set on going to the mecca of his industry, what he saw as the mecca of bodybuilding, which is America. Because they might have had like nutrition that were different, might have had drugs that were different, training, or it might have just been the people because everyone else there was like super good at bodybuilding. But for some reason, he identified America as this hub or this hot pot. Hot pot? Is it hot? No, I don't think it's hot pot. Hot spot? I think hot spot is the right word. But like, it's this place that's built different, especially for bodybuilders. And so he made it a really big goal for him to go and surround himself around that type of environment. I think I thought of something similar, especially as I'm coming to the end of my college journey, which is kind of crazy, but this is something that I'm keeping in mind. Like, maybe SF is the right place to be for me out of college, but we'll see, play by ear. Anyways, finally onto the last section of this episode, the life update. I share an update on the 4 most important areas of my life: my God, myself, my people, and my work, in that order. First, my God. Yeah, no surprise here. I think I already mentioned this in one of my L's. I have definitely been lacking or like just forgetting about God. And so I haven't really been praying. Actually, I haven't been praying at all. I haven't really been reading my scriptures, although I kind of have built that into my new routine of reading Tongan and reading the scriptures. So that one, I would kind of say is kind of good, but I think praying is probably the more important thing that I want to work on this week. And a part of it is like, look up. That's my weekly intention for next week is don't be a sheep, look up. On to myself. Yeah, I think when I came across that question, would you trade places with you a year ago? Like, dang, I definitely would not. Because the place that I am now, like to be able to go on these runs, oh my goodness, it feels so great. Like to be in, yeah, I haven't been this healthy in a long, long time. So that's honestly phenomenal. Yeah, and I think with the physical health and being super in shape is also, oh, this is something I was going to talk about earlier, but like not even just the physical health part, like the mental health part is so, so helpful. Because I think running has become one of these coping mechanisms. Because like, for example, well, actually, this weekend was a perfect example. Where usually when I have a weekend like that and I don't really know what to do and I don't really want to do any work, I would usually just go and binge eat. But instead of that, like I couldn't run, but I like recognized that. And in a dream case scenario, like my legs would have been fine and I could have gone out for a run or whatever. But I like found other ways to cope with my emotions, which I think is super, super helpful. So that's a big, big dub for running. And also, shout out to this one dude, bro. There's this one like 50-year-old, right? He's the bishop at my church, but he did the Boston Marathon, like I think it was a week ago or something. But he did the Boston Marathon under 3 hours, bro. Like he did the Boston Marathon under 3 hours, and he's like 56 years old, bro. Like that stuff is inspiring, dude. And then when he was telling me, he was like, yeah, it's just like I do it for my mental health. I was like, bro, what? Okay, I'll keep that in mind, dude. That's good to know. So maybe who knows? Maybe I'll stick with this thing. And like, dude, that'd be insane if I'm calling right now and actually do it in the future. But do a sub 3 hour marathon in the Boston Marathon. That'd be insane, bro. Cause, bro, it took me 2.5 hours to run a half marathon. Moving on to update on my people. Yeah, it's like pretty chill. There's not, honestly, I think it's just been super chill. Like it's been phenomenal. Great friends, hanging out every now and then. Big dub. And then, oh yeah, there was one thing. So this past weekend, there was something for my brother's, like he was graduating the Navy. And so I didn't go. But yeah, the reason I justified it to myself was I was like, bro, I really got to prioritize my sleep right now. And whenever I travel, my sleep is just, yeah, it just gets thrown in the trash. And on top of that, we already saw each other like a week ago. And on top of that, like he said, like it wasn't a big deal. But then now I'm thinking about like, man, I don't want to be a sheep, bro. That'll be my. I don't want to be a sheep. I don't want to put my head down and like get lost in my work that I forget about what's really important, family, and what's really important is my people, because it goes in that order: my God, myself, my people. And then I intentionally do this. My work is bottom of the barrel in terms of these areas of my life. And so I don't want to prioritize like that. But then again, like part of it is looking after myself and looking after my sleep. So maybe that could justify it, but that was something I was thinking a bit about. So yeah, maybe I'll think more about that this next week. But moving on to update on my work. Things are going well at Leland. just doing a whole bunch of email scraping. Yeah, a ton of email scraping. But most of it is like, I like it because I can build these scripts and work with Cursor to scrape all these emails and then like create all these campaigns, send them out, see what we can do. But right now, I just been doing it for student orgs. So I've been running that, basically scraping, like, I think I have a list of 12 universities. And then from those, I scraped all the club orgs or all the student clubs and then sent out emails to them and be like, hey, you want to hop on a call? We can sponsor your thing. So that's been the bulk of my work, I think, this past week. But besides that, yeah, things are pretty chill. I think it comes back to this idea of like speed being a green flag because I generally try to do these projects like pretty quickly, pretty fast. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention this. Another thing is that I started skipping one of my classes because I realized that my neuroscience class is like pretty useless. Oh freak, that reminds me of a quiz for one of my other classes. Man, I guess I do have some stuff to work on. I can do that tomorrow. Anyways, not too much updates on the work. Work is going well, but oh yeah, I think that'll be my next investment. I might get a gimbal to like start recording stuff on my phone. Maybe do a couple vlogs, see what I can cook up. But yeah, that's it for this episode. But I'll catch you in the next one. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.